Welcome everyone to today's CSIA webinar. My name is Colin Hammond and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 40 countries. Our mission is to advance the practice of control system integration to benefit our members and their clients. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process industries everywhere have access to low-risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain and exceed business goals. To highlight just a few of our many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. CSIA's Business Insurance Program offers members an excellent insurance program for business owners, subcontractors, and more. The program includes members from all over the world enjoying the peace of mind that comes with CSIA insurance. Clients in all industries are now seeking integrators with the CSIA certification alongside ISO. They recognize CSIA certified integrators' commitment to industry standards and business acumen. As a result, being certified can shorten the sales cycle. CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the premier automation guide featuring system integrators and suppliers who provide industrial manufacturing and process automation solutions. For integrators and suppliers, it's a place to market their expertise. Clients will find white papers, case studies, capabilities, contact information, and engage in conversation directly with CSIA members. Be sure to follow CSIA's online events calendars for all upcoming webinars, including both partner webinars, business webinars, and our Wednesday webinar series. CSIA partner webinars are opportunities given to CSIA industry partners to address hot topics and demonstrate their expertise. And for more information about CSIA, please visit our website or contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. And at this time, I would like to introduce Jack and Don. I believe Jack and Don are pretty familiar with the CSIA membership, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it off now. Welcome, Jack and Don.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Colin, and welcome everybody to this webinar. We look forward to providing you with some information. Let's just start out by saying we've seen this growing need in the system integrator community to develop leaders to help organizations grow. So today we'll be offering our insights on ways to empower your people to execute your vision and manage your business. Because we know that leaders just don't happen. It takes intentional development of your key people to manage their teams, their staff, and your organization.
Yeah, Jack, I thought I'd start off with just a story. A number of years ago, we were working with a company that had one majority owner and three technical people, really highly skilled technical people for the primary areas of mechanical design, electrical design, and software. Company was doing about 10 million in sales. We're very respected in the industry, and the owner had a plan to turn the leadership over to the three partners somewhere down the road, a couple, 2-3 years down the road. 10 years later, they were still about the same size. Two of the guys were gone, leaving what was arguably the weakest of the three as the candidate to turn it over. The owner ultimately was forced to go outside for leadership talent. And within 4 years, the company was sold. So you say, well, why did this happen? My observation was that the leadership team had very little self-awareness. They didn't know what they didn't know, if you will. And then the second thing was that there was really no investment that was made in developing the leadership team. So with that as a backdrop, Jack, if you want to pick it up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things we'd ask you to think about is, how much time and money are you really spending on leadership empowerment? Um, if you don't have a good answer to that, we're happy to, reach out to us and we can talk about it, based on the size of your organization, give you an idea of how much we would recommend that you should be investing in your leadership team. So let's, before we dive into this, I just want to give you kind of this orientation to thinking about leadership development. We'll use it today, and it's how we've kind of structured our offerings. So you see these concentric circles, you can kind of think of them as building out, starting with your leader's ability to focus on themselves, then be able to manage a team, then be able to actually manage people as a people manager, and then finally helping manage the organization itself. And so we'll kind of go through each of these. We won't have time to hit everything and everyone, but hit some of the highlights. All right, so let's start with that inner circle, the self-management. So in looking at leadership empowerment programs and what we've done with our clients, we kind of have topics in this area, kind of in these four subtopics, if you will: personal awareness, developing yourself, managing your work, and interacting with others. We are, there's a lot of topics in here, obviously. In the 45-minute webinar, we're just not going to be able to hit on them. So today, we're really going to focus on that first piece, that self-awareness, because we feel like that's just a foundational element to being a good leader. So what is self-awareness besides just the latest management buzzword? Research suggests that when we see ourselves clearly, we are more confident and we're more creative. We make sounder decisions, we build stronger relationships, and we communicate more effectively. Essentially, we're better workers and more effective leaders with more satisfied employees and more profitable companies. According to Tasha Eurich, her Harvard Business Review article, she reported that even though most people believe they are self-aware, through her research, she's identified that only 10 to 15 people actually fit the criterion of being self-aware. And I encourage you to read that article. It's easy to find. There's a couple things that she points out. There's there's a distinction between internal awareness, which is kind of our ability to monitor ourselves, and then our external awareness, which is how others see us, and really being able to understand and know how others see us. Secondly, and this is contrary to popular belief, expertise may not help people root out false information. You would kind of think that it might, but rather seeing ourselves as highly experienced can actually keep us from doing homework and seeking disconfirming evidence, evidence to the contrary of what we believe, and questioning our own assumptions. Similarly, the more power a leader holds, the more they can overestimate their skills and ability, and it may actually hinder their leadership abilities. And finally, this one was really interesting. Introspection does not always improve self-awareness. While it's widely assumed that examining the cause of our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors will improve self-awareness, her research suggests that people who are introspectives are actually less self-aware and report less job satisfaction. So her advice is, instead of asking a lot of why questions, which may evoke more feelings and opinions, it may tend to get people defensive about their position, ask what questions, which helps focus on the objective. Don, any comments there?
I think you get that covered up fairly good, Jack.
Okay. All right, well, then let's move on. If you haven't adopted a tool for helping your leaders improve their self-awareness, we'd recommend MBTI personal assessment, which is generally considered the most trusted and widely used assessment in the world. It's been scientifically proven, it's been around a long time, scientifically proven, but that it's not just some theory, but rather has statistical correlations with high reliability and high validity. So it's kind of engineered to be valid. And since its introductions in the 1940s, there's been continuous research to enhance the assessment, create new insights. One of the things we like about it is that there's many practical resources and reports that can be generated to help your leaders once they have gone through the assessment process. So just to kind of quickly orient you, according to Myers-Briggs, there are common personality types based on people's preferences with respect to four things, the four things that are listed here. First of all, with respect to energy, does a person prefer to focus outward or inward? Secondly, how do they prefer to take in information? Do they prefer to focus on kind of basics facts, which is more the sensing side, or do they want to look for meaning and add meaning, which is what they refer to as the intuition side? And people will tend to have a natural preference for one side or the other. Thirdly, then when it comes to then making decisions, some people rely more on logic and consistency rather than some people prefer to think more about the people and the circumstances involved, which they call the feeling side of value-based decisions. And last but not least, kind of structure. How do they prefer to organize their work and their life? There's what they call the judging side, which is being more organized and being more disciplined. And then there's perceiving, which is more less structured, more open to possibilities and things like that. Again, people just have a natural preference for one or the other.
Jack, I think you get some good news around this slide too that folks I wanted to share with you. So Jack recently went through a grueling 1-week course in the Texan heat just a couple weeks ago and got certified as an MBTI consultant. So congratulations on Jack. I know that's a to get through, and you got through. Great.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate the plug. All right. Well, I don't have time to explain everything I learned in the course. This is just to kind of provide information up here. They then take these 4 different preferences and group them together into different essentially categories. Then people will, once they've been assessed, will fall into one of these 4 categories, and then that is followed by lots of information about, okay, if you have preferences in these areas, here are the kind of strengths that come out of that, here are potential blind spots you may want to be aware of, and even to the extent you are aware of other people's MBTI types, then you can see where you will mesh well together, where you might have challenges. So very useful in helping with creating a highly effective team to have them be aware of those relative strengths and weaknesses and how they can be used in concert with each other, as well as if there's overall weaknesses in the team, those become more evident. You come up with strategies for, how to overcome that particular challenge. At Exotech, we've begun keeping our own statistics on what our industry, meaning the system integration industry, is, what sort of personality types we see in our industry. And yeah, as you can see from this chart here on the left, the 2 most popular types that have been reported are what's called ISTJ and INTJ. I realize those are just acronyms probably for you right now, but just to give you an idea, one of the main characteristics about these 2 types is what they call introverted thinking. That means this group tends to focus inwardly to gather information and generate ideas. They think logically when they make their decisions, and then the J, which is in common, is they're highly organized and structured about their processes. So I think likely that's a fairly common engineering type, and probably sound like somebody that multiple people you may know. But what we can see that there's also an overall balance with respect to a couple of things. So up at the top on the right, we take a look at the dichotomies. There's actually a pretty good balance, at least in the data set that we have so far, of people that prefer extroversion versus introversion, where they're getting their energy. And there's actually a fairly good balance between people that tend to take in facts and people that tend to focus on concepts. So really what you should look at if this is present in your leadership team is how you can account for and allow for both preferences. So some people will need time to think about things and how you can bake that into your leadership process. And then whether you have a good balance on, people that need information to process or versus you need people who can kind of more focus on concepts and have that good balance. Now, towards the right side, you see there is sorry, Don, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to answer one of Joe's questions, but I'll do that at the end of your slide.
Okay, let me just wrap this up then. So, you do see a tick on the other side, the T and the J, with those being most of the decisions are made from a logical perspective, and you may want to be aware and create strategies for making value-based decisions. And then you have a lot of people that are highly organized, which is great. A lot of project work and whatnot, that makes sense, but it also can stifle people who want to be more open, or there's times that they will kind of set their path to and get too attached to it and not show the flexibility they need. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's also this interesting MBTI map in the center, and you can kind of see that, right in the middle of that map where the F and the P's are, at least according to the data we have so far, is a low amount of people that have that F and that P. So not feelings, don't think of it as emotions, but people who rather make decisions based on values. So you want to account for that in your leadership, and also relatively weak on the perceiving, which is at times can lack flexibility when you really need it. Yeah, Don, there was a question.
Yeah, so Joe's posted a question saying, how do you feel about DISC versus MBTI? When we started down this path, one of the things that we want to do is just try and find what's a foundational tool that we can use for assessment. And we looked out at what was being used. There had to be at least 20 different tools that were being used across the industry. And a lot of them were actually based on some of the same Jung foundation that MBTI was. So we kind of picked MBTI, being that it was the largest and the most well respected out in the industry. Not to say that any of the others weren't good. I've been through DISC and Berkman and Myers-Briggs and a good number of them. They all serve a purpose. But for us, we had to start someplace, so that was why we picked this one, Joe. So real good question there. Jack mentioned this survey that we did. So I encourage you, if you know what your MBTI type is, get on and add some data points there. We have quite a good collection of data points, but if you haven't done it already, I think you can get access to it from our website, Jack.
Yeah, there's a link on the homepage. We'd appreciate it. The richer the data set, the more insights that we can provide back to the community. All right, I need to keep moving. I just wanted to put an example up. I realize this is probably small on your screens, but just to give you an idea of the type of tools that I have created and use in our offerings to the extent people are looking for assistance in this area. I actually plugged in Don and I's personality types, kind of an exotech example, if you will, and you can kind of see with this tool, we highlight where we are similar and where we have differences, as well as kind of to the right, come up with the overall team's makeup. And again, is there something missing? What sort of insights can we gain? And then on down the sheet, you can see we kind of compare our strengths, compare our weaknesses, all looking for insights on how that's going to impact the team. All right.
Yeah, Jack. One of the things one of the things I liked about that is we went through that exercise internally at Exotech, and there's no question after going through it, we modified how we interacted with each other, and hopefully I learned what not to do to impact Jack's performance negatively. So
You still do it, Don.
It was a great exercise.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of eating our own dog food. So that was, that expression. Yeah, we actually have used the tool with ourselves, and it actually has helped, our interactions. And we recognize that there's some places where we do things very similar, and there's some things that we do very differently, but we can be more empathetic. I realize there are things that I can do to better support Don in certain areas, and vice versa. So yeah, it's been very helpful. Okay, so that there's a lot more in that area, but that's what we wanted to get to today. Let's move on to the next circle, if you will. Let's move on to team management. The notion here is, after an employee has kind of proven themselves capable as an individual contributor, the first logical step towards leadership is give them responsibility for a team, give them responsibility for a project, that sort of thing, instead of working as an individual contributor. So when you want to consider how to help that person be effective, you want to think about creating how they create teams, how they conduct meetings, how they manage projects, how they troubleshoot team dynamics. There's a lot of ground to cover here. We'll just hit on some of these today. So with that introduction, what we'll touch on today is Patrick Lencioni is has a well-known book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. In it, he reveals the basics of teamwork using a story about a technology company that is struggling to grow and find new customers. So the way the story goes, the new CEO recognizes the potential of the organization, its people. However, the leaders just are not working well together as a team, and that impacts the entire organization in a negative way. The team struggles to accept responsibility and come to agreements. Through this example, the common dysfunctions become evident, and they're in this kind of order: absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance to accountability, and inattention to the results. So when you're thinking, so maybe if you think of your team, I'm not saying that you'll exhibit all of this dysfunction, but it is a good way to kind of think about and help educate your leaders about how to create a highly functional team by almost looking at the reverse. Where is it that teams struggle, and then giving the leadership tools to overcome those and make the team more effective. Here again, based on Lencioni's work, we've developed tools to help you kind of do a team analysis as a group exercise to kind of root out where there might be some of these underlying issues. And then based on kind of the relative scoring or whatnot, we can prioritize which things to go to work on. So let's kind of hit on some of those. First of all, that first level, trust. As Patrick suggests in his book, it all starts with trust. Trust isn't a quality that you either have or don't have. It's actually a learnable skill. Teams and organizations that operate with a high level of trust outperform those that don't. Teams and organizations led by high trust leaders are more energized and more engaged. They are more innovative and collaborate more effectively. So if you're looking for additional resources to build trust, we'd recommend Covey's Speed of Trust. It's a great, they've done just a great job of developing resources, books, tools that we've used and seen our clients use to good success. Don, anything you want to add there?
Keep muting myself and then I can't find the unmute button. Yeah, no, sorry. And I realize we're going to be rushed for time, but Speed of Trust is great. I've gone through the program myself. I have the cheating cards that I use to keep reminding me of the different behaviors, and I just can't speak highly enough about that. And to your point, it is just the foundation. Without that, it's pretty hard to build a strong leadership team. I will also say on the 5 dysfunctions of a team, on occasion I've worked with companies and I've recommended the book, and I pretty much know when I should just walk away when the client comes back and says, yeah, I really like that book. I'm glad we don't have all those problems. Usually if I've recommended the book, there's a sense that there's some good things in there you should learn. So anyways, I'll leave it up to you, Jack.
All right. Super. All right, let's move on then. The next level is the conflict resolution. After building that foundation and trust is done, talks about, a common pitfall is often conflict and the failure to have good techniques to resolve conflict, such as this Thomas Kilmann model, which plots the dynamics based on the 2 axes. Assertiveness is the focus on our own individual needs, desired outcomes, and agenda versus cooperativeness. And that's the focus on others' needs and individual relationships. So it's kind of laid out here. There are varying degrees that result in, in the upper left-hand corner, competing, which is kind of a zero-sum orientation, that results are viewed in a win versus lose power struggle. At the other end of the spectrum, the lower right, accommodating, where one accedes to the other party to maintain harmony at all costs, kind of thing. In between, I would say probably the least effective is the lower left-hand corner, the avoiding, which is where one withdraws from the situation to maintain neutrality, and then it kind of builds up and to the right. So the more effective mode would be compromising, that you at least find a minimal acceptable solution to maintain relationships. And finally, at the highest level is collaborating to expand the range of solutions, actually achieve the optimal solution. And so not saying you have to use this particular model, but even orienting your leaders to these different kind of modus operandus and recognizing them, then there are tools and exercises to go to work. If you find the team in this situation, here's how you can respond.
Yeah, Jack, just seeing that word collaborating out there reminds me that you need, I recommend you expand your view beyond just the team being, maybe a project team or something like that. It's the team could involve partners as well, external partners. And the word collaborating is starting to get more and more attention as people realize that a complex solution may involve not just one company, but multiple companies that are all collaborating together. So all of this is great for internal, but there's also an external impact to it as well.
Yeah, very true, very true. All right, then the next step up from there is problem solving. And so we put this out here as the so-called 7-step method. It actually, Dom was telling me it originated with Gemini back in the 1980s, but it's been adopted in various forms, and you see kind of versions of it. Traction has what they call IDS as a methodology for identifying, discussing, and solutioning. So they go by different names, but this sort of model for working through a problem is a good one. So step one, and we can't emphasize this enough with our clients, is clearly identify the problem with a concise and accurate description of the problem before you then start going into, okay, next step, exploring what sort of additional background information, definitions, constraints are around this per problem. Then get in your ideation, generate ideas using creative thinking and new approaches, or even tools for being able to manage that process. Then selecting the ideas, by grouping or and identifying kind of what is best fit. Then consider any benefits and concerns, such as increasing quality, team satisfaction, and before you kind of make that decision and kind of solve the problem, so to speak. And by solving it, I mean work through the kind of critical concerns, what's the action plan, et cetera. And then last but not least is, how are you going to track progress and milestones? So it's a good model to consider educating your leadership on. I'd say it's dynamic depending on the size of the problem. You may not really go through all, precision in all 7 steps. It may be a shorter, like traction IDS methodology, but for big challenges, this is a good technique for working through the problem. Don?
Yeah, Jack, and you mentioned the importance of identify, so whether this problem-solving team building exercise or the IDS exercise of traction, my experience is that we tend to try and rush through identifying the problem or issue that we're trying to solve and just get right to the solution. And invariably, if you do that, you're solving the wrong thing. You haven't got back to the root cause. Whether you do a series of why questions on that identify first to just get down to fundamentally what is it that we're trying to deal with. It's really important. I know I have to. I'm a just do it kind of guy, so I have to catch myself a lot because I'm trying to get to that solve as quickly as I can, and I maybe don't work as hard on that identify.
Yeah, I think that's a common challenge of those of us kind of with the engineering mindset, right? We want to solve as quickly as we can. So yeah, when needed, because it's a big decision, having more discipline and the problem solving approach can be very useful. And I like that the arrow goes back on itself, because then I say repeat as necessary. So based on your tracking, if it gets off track again, then you might need to go through another round of IDSing. So, all right, better move on. So those are some thoughts on helping your leaders manage teams. Then kind of after someone successfully has been managing teams, the next likely step in the growth of a leader is to actually give them the responsibility of managing people. Of course, you'll need to, develop their skills in managing people. A lot of us don't get that sort of education through our engineering or scientific disciplines, where we've probably most of us come out of school. So, but school have ways to help them develop skills for including how to communicate, motivate, delegate, empower, coach, set skills, even interviewing, hiring, firing, that sort of thing. Lots of ground here. So again, today we'll just touch on a few of the ones we feel are most important. So let's start with the importance of emphasizing the role itself. According to the Leadership Challenge by Coulter and Hessick, companies with highly effective people managers generate revenue 4 times faster, create new jobs 7 times faster, increase their stock price 12 times faster, and achieve profits that are 750% higher. You read more about that in that book if you choose to get it. I'll just say for myself, during my years at National Instruments, now they're officially going by NI, so my years at NI, much of the growth was attributed to what NI called the people platform. Had a distinct strategy around hiring the best and brightest out of school, creating a great work environment, and focusing time and attention on employee development. Saw that company go from 10 million to over $1 billion over the course of 30 years, and it was not missed, the importance of the people. So, and even more so in our industry, right, the services organization, your people are really your greatest asset. So having your people managers understand that is their most important job, is the successful management of your most precious asset, your people. Don, any additional thoughts there?
No, I think we're good there, Jack.
Okay, good. So some things you might want to think about. One is provide them with a communications model and training around communication. Seems, a simple enough thing, but having some training and having some work around how to have effective communications is tremendously important to being a successful people manager. I grabbed this one from Development Dimensions International, so DDI as they're commonly known. So in this model, you start with the inner circle, which you can see right there in the middle, which is really where you put your company values. In this case, all the conversations be based on those core values: esteem, empathy, involvement, whatever you've chosen as your core values, is have them up front as part and really a foundation to all communications. Then, this framework for discussion with employees goes kind of like this. So first, you open with the purpose of the discussion and what's most important. It's kind of similar to that problem-solving mode, is make sure that your people manager is clear with their employee. This is the purpose of why we're having this communication based on our core values. Next, clarify by seeking information about the situation. So enroll the employee and what the issue and the concerns are. Then, develop and ideate. So you see kind of that same sort of methodology here. Explore what kind of resources and support will be needed by that employee for whatever that particular situation is. Then be sure to verify an agreement at the end of the conversation with specific actions, including, depending on the size of it, how you're going to track and measure what success looks like. And then finally close by highlighting the importance of that particular communication to the employee and how it fits the overall organization, provide value to the organization. It's a good model. Don?
Yeah, Jack, as you're switching to the next slide, I remember working with one of the integrators that had a great little handbook, and it described the different kinds of conversations that they felt were necessary within their company. And they had like 5 or 6 different kinds. For instance, a conversation for possibility, which was really just a brainstorming conversation, and this is how you would do it, or a conversation for buy-in, and this is how you would do it. And they actually spelt it out, and it was extremely powerful. It was very, very useful.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just go into a meeting and say, okay, we're going to have a conversation for possibility. And everybody knew what the ground rules were. It was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So next up for people managers is goal setting with their employees. So, it's a good idea to provide them guidelines on what is good goal setting. I expect most of us have heard of the SMART acronym for goals. But how well are your people managers really at setting these? It takes timing and efforting to get good at doing this. Don, I don't know if we should admit we still struggle with this within our organization. But I'm not going to read through all of the SMART, but basically, if you're not familiar with the concept, be specific. What is exactly the goal, and that's probably the one that people struggle with. What kind of why? What's the motivation? Attainable? Is it realistic? Is it achievable? What will they need to be successful? Then relevant is a great one. Is how does this tie back to the organization goals? So they get why you've made this a goal for them. And finally, trackable. People do struggle with this. Some they just think about it as being time bound, but coming up with how do you know at the end of the day whether the goal's really been achieved? Yeah, good to instill discipline and provide a methodology for good goal setting. It will really drive your organization to be more successful.
Yeah, Joe's asking a question. Do you have any guidelines for this? And it is difficult. It sounds like pretty straightforward. How difficult can this be? And I'm just kind of trying to take back an answer to him. But basically, I think we mentioned this earlier. Identify what the issue is. What is the goal you're trying to accomplish? And if you haven't done a good job of that, then as you start to drive into these SMART things, you start to realize pretty quick, oh, you know what? That's maybe not exactly what we want to get to, because I don't know how I'm going to measure that, right? So use this tool, but again, just getting back to identifying the issue that or the problem that you're trying to solve. Jack kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, we were having a meeting yesterday, internal Extech meeting, and we have our QBR coming up at the end of the week here. And I said, I want us to do a better job at SMART. So it is difficult. You just need to get the discipline in there.
Yeah. And there's a lot of information out there, Joe. If you just Google it, probably SMART's one of the things of the things we talk, there may be the most information out there. But yeah, we can also facilitate, engagements with our clients to, walk their teams through this. So, happy to help if you don't want to kind of come up with it yourself, so to speak. All right. The last thing I wanted to touch on in this people area is the recognition that different management styles apply based on different situations, and having your leaders really appreciate this. I actually, when I was at National Instruments, went through a course that was based on this model, the Situational Leadership model by Blanchard and Hersey. To give you kind of a quick idea of how this works is there's different kind of modus operandus as a people manager based on where the employee is in that particular area. So if you're working with what they call an enthusiastic beginner, so they're excited about doing this new work, but they need a lot of structure, direction, and teaching. They'll need to be kind of more closely monitored to make sure that they're successful. I find the quotes around this really helpful in kind of understanding the distinction. So when you're in the directing, when that's the appropriate situation, you're ultimately saying to the employee, hey, I'll decide on this. You don't have to worry about that. I'm directing this, and I'm going to make sure you're successful. The next sort of area is what they call for a disillusioned learner. They're typically capable of doing the whatever work has been put in front of them, but they're not sufficiently motivated. In this case, they recommend listening to the issues that the employee has and re-emphasizing or explaining the importance of that goal. And involving them in the resolution of it. So the quote is, let's talk and then I'll decide. So you're still coaching, you're still kind of directing in that way. So that's tends to be with either newer employees or employees that are new to an area that they're being tasked with. All right, then we kind of flip it over and then say, okay, at the next level, it's more supporting of a what they call a cautious contributor. So they're capable and they kind of understand what they need to do. They just need you to encourage them and help offer support, not make decisions for them, but offer support in resolving their issues. Kind of a different leadership style. Okay, let's talk about it. And instead of I'm ultimately deciding, I'm going to support you and let you make the decision. More trust there. And then last but not least, what they call for self-reliant achievers is who are both capable and motivated. In that case, you just acknowledge them and provide the autonomy and really challenge them to innovate and continue to learn and teach others in that particular area. So it's really shifted completely into you decide. I have total confidence in you. I thought it was very revealing and worth working with your people managers to understand that if you're trying to do the directing mode on somebody that's really self-reliant, that's not going to be a successful strategy. So adapting your strategy based on the kind of capabilities of the people that you're responsible for. And it's not even. In some cases, you may have an employee that's very strong in some areas, so the delegating is appropriate, but they may have weaknesses in other areas or being tasked with something completely new. So even with a senior employee, you may be very directive early on in this new area. Sorry, a little bit long-winded, Don. You want to add anything to that? I'm pretty passionate about that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to add anything more to that one because we're running a little bit tight on time. So let's just keep flowing
Okay.
through here.
All right. Yeah. So let's move on. Good point. Sorry, I get passionate. So last area, so the very outer circle, if you will, is okay. Now, after they've been handed people management responsibility, you're probably challenging your leaders to lead the organization itself. So you need to invest in them to be able to do that effectively. Again, lots of stuff here. Let's just hit, given time constraints, on some of the high level ones. We've presented
Jack,
in webinars.
I am going to jump. Jack, I am going to jump in on that one because I know values is important, and I know we're going to hit it again. But I think it is it's tough. It's kind of one of those touchy-feely things, and so it's a little bit tough in our industry. But it's absolutely critically important. Even if your longer-term goal is to sell the company, you pretty much need to look at the values and value alignment between the buyer and the seller. So I know we're going to hit on it, but I didn't want to skip it.
All right.
Go ahead.
No problem. Leading the organization starts with strategic planning. A lot of people don't want to take the time to do it, but it's critical to your success. There's this quote here from Vern Harnish about companies can get sloppy with execution if they have a killer strategy or highly dedicated people working 18 hours a day, 8 days a week to cover up the slop. So we've seen lots of clients that are more the latter than the former, as they just make it up with hustle. So not a great modus operandi for your leadership team. So taking the time to do strategic planning is really critical to your success. So there's a good book if you want to read some about that. If you don't have a methodology for doing strategic planning and execution, we'd recommend, and we use this with our clients a lot, Gino Wickman's book called Traction. He not only offers ideas about strategic planning, but then he actually suggests this entrepreneurial operating system, which is what you see there on the right for managing your company. And we'll hit on a couple of these in our short time today. So as Don said, core values, critically important, often overlooked, but essential to building a strong organization is to know from whence you operate. What are your core values? Here's another book from Patrick Lencioni where he dives into there's different types of values. There are actual core values, and then there are other ones that can be confused with core values, like permission to play, aspirational, or even accidental values. So good read, good book, and we're fans of Lencioni, so would recommend that as well. Okay, so next thing we just wanted to touch on for you to consider with your leadership is how you're instituting and instilling culture within your organization, kind of beyond just the core values, but how do you define your culture? How do you teach it? How you hired it? Actually having this as part of your strategic objectives is building a thriving culture within your organization. In Laszlo's work rules, I didn't have a picture of the book here, but that's where this comes from. He's got this interesting way of viewing the makeup of an organization. You have machines that do tasks, and you have the owners, and then you have kind of the employees, which range somewhere in between. Not to depersonalize it, but do you treat your employees as machines, or do you treat them as kind of fellow owners, if you will? And they makes a pretty good argument about understanding that people aren't just about doing tasks, but through building a strong culture, they sense ownership and pride in the company. Don, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I found that when I'm acting as a leader, when I treat the people that I'm leading more as peers than as just doers, I get a ton more production out of them. So I like that last little work rules. I think it's a very effective model.
Yeah. Okay, so then coming down the stretch here, how do you turn those strategic plans into reality? This is borrowed from Traction as well. And so the notion here is it's seen on, he kind of walks you through this, you know, after you formulated your core values and your focus, you kind of create a 10-year target. Then what is your strategy for getting there? And then you start kind of subdividing it on down to, you know, a picture of what things should look like in 3 years, specific plan, 1-year plans, and then what they're he calls them quarterly rocks. They're really your 90-day priorities. And then interestingly, they also identify issues that have a specific part of your process is what's going to keep us from getting there. Very effective. For your own amusement, we'll be looking at this at our QBR on Friday for Exotech. These are our core values, our focus, what we've said is our target. And I just wanted to point out, you know, there's a couple things over there on the right. We came up with an acronym to help us remember what our core values are. I know they're supposed to be inherent, but if you can come up with a mnemonic device, it can help your employees and your leaders really keep that in the forefront of their mind. And then in the lower right is what we've defined as our proven process on how we deliver value to our clients. And in the middle, I know it's an eye chart again, but I just wanted to point out that there are things in red, and that's because, you know, strategic plans aren't etched in stone. You need to continue to review, revise, and hone them over time. So coming out of our last QBR, there were some action items to look at elements of our strategic plan. So we've added stuff that we'll be reviewing in our QBR this time. Don?
Again, I got to find that mute button a little bit quicker. Yeah, so as Jack said, you know, all of this stuff that we're talking about here, it's great material, and it's not stuff that was just theoretical for us. It's what we do. We live it. We do our strat plannings. We do our QBRs. We do our regular meetings to make sure that we're moving forward on our strategy. One of the things that I've found about systems integration, and as all of you know, I've been at this for a long, long time. We're dealing in an environment with really, really smart people. So there's no shortage of great ideas for strategy, great ideas for how to move the company forward. The real challenge that exists out there is execution. How do we take those great ideas and actually turn them into action and get some results? And again, being able to identify what it is that we're trying to accomplish and then track performance against that is absolutely critical. So we use these tools. I'm pretty happy to say that coming into this QBR, we're pretty much done everything we said we were going to get done this quarter. And so Friday we'll set up another set of goals. Okay, what are we going to accomplish in the next quarter? Execution. It's all about execution.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, in the current, you know, pandemic situation too, it was useful because the last QBR we were kind of just starting into it is really look at what are our 90-day goals and decide if that's really what we still want to do in the current environment, or again, strategic planning is not something you do annually and it just sits on the shelf. It's okay, let's review this and decide in the next 90 days, are these still really our priorities? And I'm sure we'll do that again on Friday. Okay, so sorry, we really wanted to cover a lot of ground. This is a big area, hard to boil down to 45 minutes, but hopefully we gave you lots of ideas and resources that you can either take on for yourselves and stitch into your leadership empowerment activities, or, you know, certainly Exotech's available to support you where needed. So. Don, are there any other questions? Colin, we can kind of open it up.
Yeah, so I've been watching the questions in the chat session, and I haven't seen anything new pop up here recently, but I also want to make a note that this is being recorded, so it will be available. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't expect that you guys are scribbling down notes as we're going along. So make sure that Colin will send something out and say, okay, yeah, the recording's available. Go back, use it as reference material. as Jack said, reach out to us at any point in time. I probably read a leadership development book one a month. So we know this is important. We try to stay on top of it as much as we can. So happy to help.
Yeah.
So any questions? You can use I'm watching both the Q&A and the chat sessions. So either one of them we'll try to get to.
Yeah. I guess we'll.
And
okay.
we have one.
Looks like we got a couple.
Have a question.
You want to go ahead
coming in.
Have you ever had to abandon a goal or a portion of a strategy to pivot? I'll say absolutely. We tend to use the word defer the goal rather than abandon it. But it's like, okay, a situation has changed. That's no longer the highest priority. Let's defer that, and we'll, at the annual strategic planning, we'll still have that on the list, and we can always reconsider it. That would be my response. Don?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm working with a client. Actually, I have a client meeting coming up here later today with a client that we were working on the strategy. COVID hit. They had to pivot pretty significantly. Jack mentioned plans are great, but if you need to change, you just have the tools. You jump in and you make that change to your plan. I'm not suggesting that you put a plan that is not without the intention of following it, but I think it's important that you realize that, sometimes we have to move.
Yeah. If we haven't learned that lesson in the last 3 months. But better to make those changes in a structured way and in a structured process rather than call it willy-nilly. So, even the QBR processes and whatnot aren't intended to lock you in. It's really to make sure that we all always use the term working on your business, not just in your business. And that's true of Exotech ourselves. I mean, we get very busy with our clients, but carving out time to make sure, what are we doing to make Exotech a better company? And are we building the infrastructure? What do we need to be doing on the business, not just in business and our help with clients? So,
Somebody recognized the award-winning company. Thank you, and thank you for everything that everybody else does to support CSIA. I genuinely appreciate that as well.
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. We'll hang out here as long as you guys need. But just to kind of then, wrap that up. One is, we put this light bulb here on this slide. We do recommend that you take away something from today. I mean, we appreciate you showing up and listening to us, but the real value is take 1, 2, maybe 3 of the things that we've said today and do something about it. Even if you need to follow up with us to get more information about what you can do or how you can do it. But that's the value of this time together, is a takeaway that you will do something about.
And even send us an email with those takeaways in them. If
that'd
there's
be
something
great.
that just really hit home for you, send us an email.
Great idea, Don. Yeah, we very much appreciate the feedback on what most resonated with you, because that can drive where we want to spend more time and provide value back to the community. So, okay. We'll just put this up. We'll continue, at least on a quarterly basis, with hitting these different areas of what we call our basic model, different aspects, similar to, the CSIA best practices, just, our kind of way of saying, our job is to understand what it takes for you to be successful in system integration and be there to support you guys to do it.
Great job, guys. Jack. I mean, I didn't believe you could get that done in that amount of time.
Well, you did a good job spurring me on. So I think probably everybody knows how to get a hold of us, but if you're fairly new to CSI and you don't know, here's, basic information about myself. Feel free to reach out and let us know what you're struggling with. And, we're here to listen and help.
All right. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Don. On behalf of CSI, I'd just like to thank all those attending as well. We hope you found this webinar informational. If you could just take a look at our events calendars if you get a minute. We do have other webinars going. We have one tomorrow, and then we have a few more coming the rest of the month. So we do have a few of those up there. We'd appreciate it if you could take a look. Other than that, just thanks, Jack. Thanks, Don. And we hope you all have a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye now.